The human head split open with a sickening crunch as the Barzan's heavy boot crushed the child's skull into the dirt. Little did they know, their first grave mistake was thinking the humans would ever let this go unpunished. A hush fell over the chamber as Philip Dixon, a battle-hardened human mercenary, stood shackled before the Galactic Council. The charges against him were damning, slaughtering an entire Barzan colony and executing Nox, the young son of the Barzan ambassador. Damning video from Philip's own helmet cam showed him and his mercenary crew storming the colony, mowing down defenseless civilians, and Philip himself pulling the trigger to end Nox's life. Philip's face was stone, his eyes cold steel, as they sentenced him to death by firing squad. Guards dragged him away to a dark cell to await the hour of his execution. Alone with his thoughts, Philip's mind reeled back to 2 months prior. The catalyst for this bloodbath. The secret mission handed down from the Council itself. For months, the Barzans had been acting erratically, tearing up trade deals, sealing their borders with no explanation. Alarming intelligence painted a grim picture, the Barzans secretly amassing armies and bioengineering illegal weapons of mass destruction. Fearing the Barzans were gearing up for all-out war, but not willing to levy baseless accusations and risk instigating the very conflict they dreaded, the Council turned to their best covert agent. Philip was known for infiltrating and executing black operations, no questions asked. His handler, Councillor Zahn, charged him with slipping onto Barza undetected, uncovering ironclad proof of the Barzans' deadly plots. But he had to tread lightly. The Barzans were known for their ruthlessly advanced surveillance and defense tech. Make one wrong move and he'd be caught, his mission exposed, potentially triggering the galaxy-wide war he aimed to stop cold. If Philip failed, the Barzans' devastating first strike could wipe out billions of innocent lives across hundreds of Council worlds. The irony wasn't lost on Philip as he sat rotting in his dank cell, waiting for the firing squad's plasma rifles to burn holes through his chest. For all the Council's vaunted intelligence gathering, their greatest minds still managed to get the story dead wrong. They had no idea about the insidious truth he'd uncovered on Barza, no clue the horrifying reality that would soon make them rue the day they decided to martyr Philip Dixon. 2 months earlier, Philip Dixon found himself slipping past the Barzan homeworld's stringent border controls, armed with expertly forged credentials identifying him as a mid-level bureaucrat in their defense apparatus. The deception came easily to him, honed by years of covert operations. Philip knew he had to tread carefully. One misstep and the Barzan's ruthless security would be on him in an instant. For weeks Philip played his role to perfection, just another cog in the Barzan war machine. He clocked in each day at the Ministry of Defense, head down, completing his mundane tasks without complaint. But behind this facade, Philip worked tirelessly to exploit his clearance, burrowing deep into the Barzan's most sensitive databases and worming his way into their top-secret facilities. Piece by piece, he assembled a damning dossier detailing the Barzan's clandestine plot against the Council. It was another late night of surreptitious data mining when Philip's heart nearly stopped at the sound of the door creaking open behind him. His hand reflexively darted to the small holdout blaster concealed up his sleeve as he spun to face the intruder, a disarming smile plastered on his face. But instead of a squad of heavily armed security troops, Philip found himself staring down at a small Barzan child, no more than 6 years old. "What are you doing here so late, mister?" the boy asked, his head cocked inquisitively to the side. "Are you working on a special project?" Philip's mind raced as he recognized the child, Nox, the son of the Barzan ambassador himself. This was the last complication he needed. "Ah, hey there, kiddo," Philip said, his voice a forced calm as he subtly angled his body to block Nox's view of the console. "Just had some boring paperwork I forgot to finish up. Nothing special." Nox seemed to accept this, nodding sagely as if intimately familiar with the drudgery of adult office work. But then his eyes caught the glint of the data drive in Philip's hand. "Oh, what's that?" Nox asked, pointing excitedly. "Are those the cool secret files? Can I see?" Philip tried to wave the boy off with a chuckle. No, this is just a... Just some personnel records. Really dry stuff, trust me. You wouldn't be interested. But Knox was not to be dissuaded. With a playful giggle, the boy lunged forward, his small hands grasping for the data drive. Philip's combat reflexes kicked in before he could even think. In a split second, he had Knox spun around, the barrel of the holdout blaster pressed firmly to the boy's temple. Knox went rigid, a small gasp escaping his throat as his eyes went wide with fear. Philip's finger hovered over the trigger, his mind spinning with the enormity of the choice before him. If he let the boy go, his cover would almost certainly be blown, his critical mission fatally compromised. The fate of billions across the galaxy hung in the balance. And yet the alternative, to willfully execute a child in cold blood, could he ever come back from that? Could he ever look at himself in the mirror again, knowing he'd snuffed out such a young, innocent life? Philip's grip shook as the blaster pressed into the boy's temple. Knox's eyes were wide, his breath coming in short gasps. In that moment, Philip saw not a threat to his mission, but a terrified child, utterly at his mercy. His finger slowly eased off the trigger. Lowering the weapon, Philip knelt down to Knox's eye level. He forced a smile. "Hey, bud, sorry if I scared you there. These files, they're just boring, grown-up stuff. Trust me, nothing a smart kid like you would find interesting." Knox seemed to relax a bit at Philip's gentle tone. Philip placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and steered him toward the door. "Tell you what, though, it's pretty late. Probably not the best idea for you to be wandering around here by yourself. How about we get you back to your folks, okay?" Knox nodded, relief washing over his face. "Okay, mister, thanks for not being mad." Philip watched as the boy scampered off down the hallway, his small form quickly vanishing around a corner. He let out a shaky breath, holstering the blaster. That was too close. Turning back to the console, Philip hastily downloaded the remaining files onto his data drive. He couldn't risk any more interruptions. Slipping the drive into his pocket, he glanced around the room one final time to make sure he hadn't left any traces. Satisfied, he slipped out into the deserted corridor and made his way out of the building, melting into the night. Back in his safe house, Philip pored over the stolen data, his face illuminated by the sickly glow of the computer screen. Each new revelation sent a fresh chill down his spine. The Barzans weren't just flouting council laws on weapons development. What they were working on was far, far worse. Project Nemesis, they called it, a genetically engineered plague, designed to target the unique DNA of every other sentient species in the galaxy while leaving Barzans untouched. The projections were horrifying. If unleashed, the virus could wipe out upwards of 90% of the galactic population within a matter of months. Entire species rendered extinct in the blink of an eye. And it was close, terrifyingly close to completion. The files indicated that live trials were set to begin within days at a covert laboratory, concealed deep beneath a Barzan agricultural colony on some backwater planetoid. Philip leaned back in his chair, mind racing. He had to get to that lab, had to destroy the plague before the Barzans could deploy it. But the colony would be locked down tight. There was no way he'd be able to infiltrate it undetected, not with the heightened security that was sure to be in place. He needed a distraction, something big enough to draw the Barzan's attention away from the colony. His thoughts drifted back to Knox. The ambassador's son would be the perfect leverage. If he could get his hands on the boy, use him as a bargaining chip. Philip shook his head, disgusted with himself for even entertaining the notion. Threatening a child, he'd be no better than the monsters he was trying to stop. But as he turned back to the screen, the casualty projections seeming to mock him, he felt his resolve hardening. Billions of lives were at stake. What was one boy against the fate of the entire galaxy? Hating himself even as he began to plan, Philip started mapping out his infiltration of the ambassador's residence. He'd need to move fast before his conscience could get the better of him again. Knox's abduction would be the spark that ignited the powder keg. And in the ensuing chaos, Philip would strike at the heart of Project Nemesis. For better or worse, there was no turning back now. The darkness cloaked Philip like a shroud as he crept through the ambassador's residence. his stolen maintenance uniform allowing him to blend seamlessly with the night staff. His heart pounded in his ears, each step a calculated risk. One misstep, one errant sound, and it would all be for nothing. He paused outside Knox's bedroom, hand resting on the door handle. The weight of what he was about to do hit him like a hammer blow. This was more than just a mission now. This was a line he could never uncross. With a deep breath, Philip eased the door open and slipped inside. Knox lay in his bed, small chest rising and falling with the gentle rhythm of sleep. He looked so innocent, so vulnerable. Philip's hand shook as he approached the bedside. "I'm sorry, kid," he whispered, more to himself than to the sleeping child. "But I have to do this for everyone." He placed his hand gently over Knox's mouth. The boy's eyes flew open, wide with sudden terror as they focused on Philip's face. Philip could feel him start to struggle, start to scream against his palm. "Shh, hey, it's okay," Philip soothed, hating the tremor in his voice. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. I just need your help, all right? I need you to help me save a lot of people." But Knox wasn't listening. He thrashed, small hands clawing at Philip's arm. Philip closed his eyes, steeling himself. Then, with practiced precision, he shifted his grip, cutting off the blood flow to the boy's brain. In seconds, Knox went limp. Philip gathered the child into his arms and slipped back into the hallway, moving with a swiftness born of desperation. He had to get off the planet, had to get his message to the Barzans. Every second counted. Once safely away, he composed his ultimatum with shaking hands. The ambassador's son for the colony. Abandon their work there, or the boy dies. He hit send, feeling like he'd just signed his own death warrant. But it worked. Within minutes, reports flooded in of Barzan ships frantically scrambling, all available resources diverted to the hunt for Knox. Philip allowed himself a grim smile. They'd taken the bait. The colony was a ghost town when he arrived, the Barzan's single-minded focus on Knox, leaving it all but unguarded. Philip moved quickly, following the stolen schematics to the hidden laboratory deep beneath the earth. Nothing could have prepared him for what he found inside, row after row of stasis pods, each containing a twisted mockery of life. Dozens of species, all in various stages of hideously unnatural decay. The lucky ones were already dead. The others... Philip's gorge rose as he passed a chamber containing a Xylothian child, her once vibrant lavender skin, now a mottled grey, riddled with pulsating black veins. Her eyes, milky with the ravages of the bioweapon, locked onto his. A thin, reedy wail escaped her lips, a wordless plea for the mercy of death. With bile burning his throat, Philip planted his explosives with mechanical efficiency, each one a promise that this ends now. No more innocents would suffer this horrific fate. He was halfway to the exit when a voice stopped him cold. "You're too late, human." Philip spun, blaster leveled at the Barzan scientist emerging from the shadows. The Barzan's eyes gleamed with a fervor that bordered on madness. "Our great work is already complete," the scientist spat, brandishing a small vial. "With this, the Barzan people will take our rightful place as the supreme species in the galaxy. All others, all you lesser beings, will be naught but dust." "Put it down," Philip commanded, a dangerous calm settling over him. "Put it down, or I will put you down." The scientist laughed, a shrill, unhinged sound. "You can't stop what's coming. The cleansing is inevitable. It is our destiny." His hand moved to uncork the vial. Philip didn't hesitate. His blaster pulse caught the scientist square in the chest, reducing him to a cloud of sizzling plasma in an instant. The vial fell to the floor with a tiny clink. For a moment Philip stared at it, transfixed. So small a thing to hold the power to unmake worlds. Then, with a last whispered apology to Knox, he triggered the detonator. The ground heaved. Fire blossomed. The laboratory collapsed in on itself, burying the abominations within beneath tons of rubble and earth. And through it all, Philip ran, the wrath of the explosions nipping at his heels. He burst from the colony gates, just as the final charges reduced the compound to smouldering ash. chest heaving, Philip watched the embers dance on the wind. It was over. The plague was destroyed. The mission was complete. But as he turned his face to the stars, Philip couldn't shake the sinking realization that his troubles were only just beginning. He had the Barzan's most precious bargaining chip, and he had just reduced their dreams of galactic conquest to cinders. They would be coming for him, and they would show no mercy. Steeling himself for the fight to come, Philip melted into the shadows once more. He had a promise to keep, a promise to a frightened little boy, a promise to a galaxy on the brink. The road ahead would be long and hard, but Philip Dixon would walk it to the end, no matter the cost. Philip emerged from the smouldering ruins of the hidden Barzan laboratory, his face smeared with soot, his eyes haunted. The bioweapon was destroyed, the galaxy saved from a horrific fate. But there was no time to savor the victory. In the chaos of the lab's destruction, Philip had forgotten about Nox. The boy was still tied up in that abandoned building, alone and frightened. Heart-pounding, Philip raced back to the location, praying he wasn't too late. But as he approached, his stomach turned to ice. The place was swarming with Barzan soldiers, their weapons drawn, their faces twisted with rage. "Human!" one of them snarled, jabbing his rifle into Philip's chest. "Where is the boy? Where is the ambassador's son?" Philip raised his hand slowly, exhaustion and guilt weighing heavy on his shoulders. He's in the building, tied up. I'm sorry, But the Barzans weren't listening. They stormed into the building, a dozen heavily armed soldiers kicking down the door and charging inside. Philip stood there, heart in his throat, waiting, hoping. But then they emerged, and Philip's world shattered. In their arms they carried the lifeless body of little Nox, his small form crushed and broken. They had failed to clear the building properly, too focused on finding the boy. And Nox, struggling against his bonds, had accidentally brought a precariously stacked pile of debris down upon himself. The Barzan's grief and fury etched into every line of their faces, turned on Philip. Blows rained down, fists and rifle butts striking him from every angle. Philip didn't resist, didn't fight back. He deserved this. He had caused this. Battered and barely conscious, Philip was dragged before the Galactic Council, the Barzans howling for his blood. In the Grand Chamber, the evidence of his supposed crimes was laid out, the destruction of the colony, the execution of Nox. No mention was made of the horrors he had uncovered, the bioweapon he had stopped. "Have you anything to say in your defense, human?" the councillor spat, disgust dripping from every word. Philip, his face a mask of bruises and blood, slowly stood. In his hand he held a small data drive. "Only this," he rasped. "The truth." And then he told them everything. The Barzan's secret experiments, the abducted aliens, the horrific deaths, the plague that would have consumed the galaxy. As proof, he offered up the stolen files, the footage from his hidden cameras. The council chamber was silent as they watched the lead Barzan scientist, mad eyes gleaming, ranting about cleansing the galaxy of lesser species. They saw the rows upon rows of stasis pods, each containing a twisted, agonized victim of the bioweapon. In the face of this damning evidence, the Barzan ambassador, Nox's father, crumbled. Tears streaming down his face, he confessed to it all, his voice broken by anguished sobs. The council erupted into chaos, shouts of outrage and horror echoing off the high walls. In the pandemonium, Philip was quietly led away. His ultimate fate left ambiguous in the wake of these shocking revelations. The Barzans were quick to face the consequences of their actions, harsh sanctions, removal from the council, their reputation shattered beyond repair. But Philip took no joy in this. As he sat in his cell awaiting the council's judgment, all he could see was Nox's lifeless face, those innocent eyes staring into eternity. He had saved the galaxy, but the cost had been too high. In the end, Philip walked away from it all. He resigned his commission, turning his back on the life of a covert operative. The council, perhaps recognizing the toll this mission had taken, let him go without a fight. And so Philip found himself adrift, haunted by his actions, by the young life he had so carelessly destroyed in the name of the greater good. He wandered the far reaches of space, seeking solace in seedy bars and backwater planets, trying to lose himself in the bottle. But there was no escape, no redemption. Philip was a broken man, forever changed by the mission that had succeeded, but at the price of his soul. In a dingy bar on a forgotten world, Philip nursed a drink, his eyes hollow, his heart heavy. The galaxy continued to turn, blissfully unaware of how close it had come to destruction, of the sacrifices made to keep it safe. And here sat Philip Dixon, the man who had saved them all and damned himself in the process. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.